What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. With the recent hotfix patch settling in a bit, I think it's finally time to release a tier list ranking the different heroes and strategies that are prevalent in the game right now. Today we'll start with supports, since it is the most popular role by far now, with a charming, sprightly new hero in the lineup. The recent hotfix to Juno solved a lot of her problems for me to help sculpt an identity for her that's quite playable. In the trial period, she was mirroring a little bit more of a heal bot, but they've rearranged the stats of her to give her a big play and meaningful offense. With a lot of playtime, as well as the community getting used to the synergies and counters of Juno, things have developed quite a bit. Remember, support composition radically changes the way the entire team comp should function and engage, because the rest of the team should be looking to emphasize those strengths that enable you to do whatever the support enables you to do. For Juno, the most unique thing about her kit is that she can stay consistently in the fight vertically in a way no other support can. Her biggest play, in my opinion, is when she's using this mobility play to swoop in and get a flying high noon effect with her pulsar torpedoes, which got buffed to have more impact, and the combination of that reliable damage and heal to multiple targets, as well as her reliable weapon, playing with aggressive teammates allows her big plays to make. What Juno hates is being targeted and her team playing too slow. If she's on the back foot needing peel, she's kind of useless. But the more active your team plays, or if they play active heroes that can make use of her playstyle, then she's a force multiplier on that idea. We don't have time to talk about snowballs and counter swapping and all those other things that people complain about in Overwatch 2, but Juno makes all of those things much worse. Because if you're winning with a Juno comp, you win much faster. Because currently at the moment, you can have 3 team speed boost effects all at once, potentially in your team comp. You could choose to pick that. With Akiri, albeit only in her ultimate, or with Lucio speed boost, and then Queen. Not to mention there's lots of heroes with their own speedy mobility options anyway. So some combination of that, your team can move into position very quickly. This has created the game to be kind of unbalanced, frankly. As in, some heroes are way at the top and some heroes are way at the bottom. One of the worst heroes in the game, for example, for me right now, is Roadhog, who likes to play a lurking pickoff game. We ain't playing that kind of Overwatch right now. Even if Hog does get his cooldown cycle to work and get a pick, the likelihood that the entire enemy team can turn and quickly focus fire is very high, meaning he won't have time to settle and recharge like he wants to. Instead, what you need is characters either with mobility or very defensive stats that can hold their ground. Because if you are out of position as any character in this kind of meta, the speed boost will swarm you. Something about Overwatch that we tend to forget is a reason why Lucio was such a top tier meta pick for so many years. Perhaps the highest competitive pick rate over the course of the 8 years of Overwatch, rivaled only by maybe a character like D.Va. The reason is, no matter what heroes you have, man advantage is always better than hero counterpick advantage. Now, the devs have taken extreme countermeasures against this to try to make sure that mobility characters can't be stacked too much together, because if you start picking lots of the mobility class of character, your whole team comp becomes less healthy, with everyone having 25 less HP than a normal character. In our recent guide video, we talked about this. You can check that out for further explanations on how to use a more turret value style character, and they'll appear in the tier list, of course. But those are like the competing forces we're dealing with right now. You can either be a value turret or play the mobility meta game. All right, that's the general principles of the entire meta right now. With that explained, let's take a look at the tier list. Here, all the supports at once. The reason I put Baptiste all the way at the top is a few reasons. We're going to see some recurring themes of the best characters for Season 12. Characters that have reliable damage are really good right now. There's a few reasons. Bap in many ways is a better Juno, with multiple health bars for himself and his team, with a better statted weapon both for damage and for healing. He can multitask. The only weakness is that he has less horizontal mobility. He's not going to cross distances as much. But with a bit of teamwork, or a bit of setup, or playing on a small enough map like Throne of Anubis, you very quickly realize that that's just fine. Remember, flying DPS have lower health too, so there's lots of characters that BAP has a stat advantage against. Then looking at the A tier, I do have the mobility supports here at the top, but specifically because I think Lucio Curie is such a dominant combination. Mainly just due to their damage buffs. Their damage is insane, and their ultimates are insane. I think they both take more skill to play now with lower health They're less brawly and forgiving. And after reviewing a lot of VODs recently, I think Suzu might be the thing that stops Kiri's win rate from being as good at the average tier of play as compared to the top tier. And the way they've balanced these two characters, they're even more top balanced now, I think, because if you've got the aim, they will dominate the server. Remember, more damage on your attacks isn't just secure kills faster, it's farm ult faster, it's finish the fight faster. Meanwhile, they make the fight faster to begin with. Season 12 really got ramped up to be a fast meta, and it's not just the speed boost, it's the damage increase from the support line. Juno in the middle of the A tier, with some benefits in that she might be easy to play with randoms because she's less reliant on their positioning, because she can kind of fly around in and out however she wants. The buff to her mobility was a big deal. The buff to her damage was a big deal. If you look for opportunities to sync with your tank's engagement, to launch a volley of rockets, her Medi Blaster is incredibly consistent. Easier to hit than the supports above her. And over time, I think players are getting better at Juno, realizing probably the best way to use Speed Ring is right at the heart of the engagement and let your teammates reuse it multiple times. Speed makes your team harder to hit, and there's certain characters that really benefit from that. Junker Queen maybe being my favorite. Moira and Brig, less aim-reliant options that interface with this kind of meta. Brig more of a value turret like BAP. Moira more of a swarming mobility character, the budget Kiri. Brig's combos and brawling should be considered when you're looking to slow the game down a little bit. Moira I see as a more budget version of some of these mobility characters, but so reliable that if there's a hero on the enemy team, you might free win if you've got a strong matchup against them, able to swarm and DPS them down. But her health went down too, remember. But in general, whether it's Lucio, Kiri, or Moira, their playstyle has transferred to where in Season 9 they were kind of brawly, sustainable, forgiving. Now they're good based on their offense and mobility, as opposed to their brawliness. B tier, I don't think I put these supports like way down below everything else. I just think they're all situational. Illari to me is strictly a high tier player problem. Takes too much aim skill in order to actualize, whereas a lot of the other supports just kind of fling around or throw stats randomly. You got to have great aim for Illari to work, and not only that, good rotations. Mobility has a way of making the gameplay more forgiving. Illari can more easily be punished with mistakes of positioning by your team as well, and especially if they don't play around the pylon, you're kind of like down a guy. You just need a lot of strats of positioning cohesion, whereas the other supports all can play their own position and hold their ground more easily in the S and A tier. Zen and Ana, huge plays, huge carries, just kind of unnecessary. Risk reward. With a lot of characters with lower health now, why do you need a big play to confirm a kill? Maybe there's something you want to counter specifically, but if you get your life traded out for it, was it worth it? That's the question you have to ask. Mercy got some buffs on her staff, and sometimes feels similar to Juno with the lower health. They're both vertical flying characters that fly in and out of the combat with their team supporting, and they both feel kind of easy to get targeted. If you've got a really strong winning matchup from your team to theirs, the damage boost buff can certainly be scary, but Valk is kind of paling in comparison for me compared to the other ultimates. It's just kind of slow and grindy. Whereas Juno's, I don't necessarily rate as the best ult, but has the attributes of Mercy's ult and is just a bit better because it has some potency to get one pick early, and having man advantage, as we said, allows the mobility advantage to really clean up. They made Lifeweaver have some improvements, but it's just not his kind of meta. It's not slow enough. Just like Illari, I think you got to get the team to be around him more. Otherwise, you're really going to notice the lack of offense, even though he's allowed to attack a little bit more now. It's not just getting to shoot, because his positions, largely, he's just going to shoot at the front line or defend against the flank maybe, but there's going to be so many targets zipping around him, it's not quite enough. Like if you want to play defensive, parry back, Brig is way, way better, with an ult that also adds sustain, but puts the game more in your hands, with combos and plays to make. Let's add the tanks now. 3 tanks into the S tier: D.Va, Reinhardt, and Junker Queen. D.Va's Matrix got a small cutback, but between her and Reinhardt, with the added mobility of the game, high amounts of defense, and moderate offense, that gives the most playability for you to deal with whatever attacks are hitting your team. Now, it might be tempting to go aggressive, and maybe against some of the mobility class characters like Juno, D.Va can punish them. But the reason why these tanks sit atop the entire list is because, especially due to the armor buffs a few patches ago, and the massive discrepancy between having defense on your team in a speedy meta versus a team that doesn't have it is immense. The team fights happen much faster now, in such a way where it almost is like, why did they even change the health in Season 9 anyway? There's barely any improvements, quote unquote. Like a handful of the burst sniper style characters are definitely worse than they were then, but overall, the time to kill on a lot of things has just shortened yet again. So because of that, having some defense to protect against that, so your team's not instantly dead at the start of the fight, pays massive dividends. The armor improvements means Rein and D.Va benefit from being basically immune to shotgun and rapid fire damage. Rein definitely gets a boost on this tier list, assuming you have a BAP. That changes things a lot, because Rein's major weakness is he's not going to contest the verticality of a lot of these other heroes. He's not the one to go chase down the mobility class heroes zipping around. He instead kind of auto wins against most tanks on the point. The streamers won't tell you that, but that's what's true objectively looking at the win rate stats, or if you watch an average tier of gameplay. Rein dominates most other tanks because enemy teams typically make the mistake of targeting him too much when he's just camping on the objective, not doing a whole lot. His ability to tank is unreal, rivaled only to Ramatra, who is better at higher tiers, but requires more finesse and understanding, more ability management. Rein holds right click, and then when there is time to go aggressive, there's lots of characters that can increase your speed so you can close the distance. Queen also in the S tier. While her shotgun is weak to armor, she does have Carnage, which is a big burst of damage, as well as other options to reposition and go at the squishies more offensively. With a lot of characters with lower health now, her medium range shotgun damage is kind of nuts against them. And with Ana being a liability, Queen's carry potential skyrockets. Having extra speed options gives Queen a lot of ability to wrong foot the enemy. With her own cooldown and potentially 2 speed cooldowns from her supports, her whole kit is kind of like a shotgun anyway. You want to go in, get a pick, and get out. And with a lot of chaos going on, Queen is very maneuverable in a highly maneuverable meta. A lot of the other brawly style tanks don't have the moves or the extra sustain that Queen does, either for herself or to give to her team. Otherwise, tanks in the A tier, I've got Winston, Ram, and Wrecking Ball. Winston and Ram have shields as well as cleave attacks. Lots of reliable damage and defense that can also, similar to the S tier tanks, auto win just by having the right team comp right now. Speeding in a character that can fight something they counter wins very quickly. And Winston's Primal Rage buff means the skill ceiling on the hero is utterly insane. I'd put him up a tier if I was ranking this for the top player base, but since a lot of metal rank players really only know how to look at the front line and struggle to play the divey style he needs, he's just a little too easy to be countered by popular heroes that tank bust or when teams don't play as aggressive. Ram's got quite a few decent tank matchups among the tanks that you're likely to see, making him a pretty good frontline brawler. Keep in mind that Vortex can really be used to punish those 225 HP targets now. Ram will look like the best tank in the game if you can funnel the enemy into targeting just you and specifically your block. With burst damage and disables at a low point right now, Ram can control the game on certain maps. And even from the opposite point of view, you'll notice that like high damage characters are kind of just not really required right now. You need like a lot of reliable ammo, and Ram's got that. Wrecking Ball as well. Finally, one meta where I think he's better than Doom. Too many things vertical. He can go at Juno, play with Juno, or if they're playing more of a slower backline style, he can disrupt them, giving crucial shield health to his team. I think it's pretty tough to play against the tanks above him on the list, unless they misplay badly. So I kind of like where he stands. Decent matchups against most of the tanks below him, just because he fits more in the meta playstyle. That being said, I do think Mauga hard counters him. Mauga's like a counterpick tank, kind of the king of counterpick tanks. I do think if you have the skill, you can outplay some of his counters. I think it's easier to outplay Sigma over D.Va because you have the mobility to outposition him and you can even stun him in his grasp. Mauga's like a big sleeper pick for me. The skill required to play him, though, is just a little more than you probably want. There's a few tanks above him that he does have good matchups against. All Ram and Queen are playable. You straight up cannot target the tank if you're up against Rein or D.Va, which means you're limited at just going at squishies and slamming them or making severe crossfire angles. But I just think Mauga's ult is so freaking good. He does have potential if you specialize in him. He's got a bit more higher upside, but with more risk. Like if you're going to relentlessly go at squishies, do you really need all of the extra stats and the big lifesteal for your team, or is Winston's bubble going to kind of do the job? The benefits to Mauga is he can apply ranged crossfire damage to the flyer characters and has more skill expression with hitting his stuns. You can mechanically outplay with the character, but there's much easier, better team-reliant picks. I think Zarya's buffs feel great. The extra damage on alt fire is nasty, but the meta's kind of passed her by. We're not in a brawl meta, so good luck. And it's going to be hard for you to, quote, counter D.Va if her and her team are flying overhead and you're already down a member or two as you try to hold position. If you can stack with your team, she can be okay, but the problem is because she has windows of opportunity to focus her when her bubbles are either focus fired down or on cooldown, tanks that quickly get overwhelmed are pretty bad right now. And that goes for the other tanks in the category, Sigma, Orisa, Hog. Those static stun tanks, you better have perfect positioning and never step one step too far, or before you know it, you will be overwhelmed quickly. Fighting on the back foot, unsure what you can even meaningfully target. Meanwhile, everything else is zipping in and out all around you. Good luck with that. With perfect positioning, discipline, and hitting all your skill shots, you can carry back with these picks. But why do that in comparison to like pointing defense matrix at something, swinging a duel, and fluidly, easily playing the tank game? Like, good luck. It's just not the game we're playing right now. I maybe should even have put these lower, honestly. These tanks that don't really reposition well, not very good right now. Too hard to play. Doom, somewhere vaguely in B tier. I don't know, everything's in the sky. Can you punch a character in the sky? If you can, maybe you get him to work. I think Doom's easily the worst dive tank right now, but skill expression is a thing. Now let's roll through the damage category. S tier. Junkrat. You better believe I'm putting Junkrat up in S tier. All right, there's a few picks that make his life miserable. Not great into D.Va, who's a top tier pick, but if you can hit a nade mine combo on the mobility class of character, you are dominating on this hero. The reason this is important is while he can easily get overwhelmed, yes, he'll give you an outrageous amount of tank damage and a lot of spatial control in a meta that there's a lot of mobility characters being played, even on maps where they're kind of small, right? Like the new Clash map especially is very small. You already had a bunch of control maps that were good, and while there's plenty of maps you might not want to pick him on, he is so dominant on his good maps. Yeah, I'm putting Junk in S, especially when you consider just how reliable the rest of your team probably is based on the heroes they'll be playing, just getting in and out to finish off things or deal a little bit of damage to allow your spam to be lethal. We're in a very burst damage meta again, somehow. It's just a few characters are in it. Some characters are getting bursted and others aren't at all. So Junk having that puts him in S tier. I mean, I don't put him up against all of the S tier picks for me. And remember, my tier lists are for the average tier of player. And I just think his kills are so much easier to hit than just about anything else in this DPS category. But all right, rest of the A tier now. Torb, Giga buffed, hard counters, mass mobility comps, so hilariously easy, very similar to Junkrat, but way more forgiving. The two character types that are good right now are either ones that make use of speed or are turrets. Torb is like the damage version of BAP. He's a value turret. Stands in the team formation, very flexible, outrageous amount of power in Torb's hands. Reaper next. Reaper loves speed, helps him close the distance, but also his health points and durability end up mattering a lot in the type of meta where simple man advantage is doing everything. Team shooting is great, and especially when there's characters like Lucio and Kiri or BAP adding a lot of pressure from the backline, you don't necessarily need some power medium range DPS character to do that for you. You might have enough firepower in the back to follow up on just from your supports, or you know, a Torb turret or something. Reaper's cooldowns look insane for this kind of meta. It's going to offer you a lot of easy matchups against a lot of popular heroes. Tracer, more difficult, certainly way more punishing to try to duel some of these DPS supports, but with skill expression, just plays positions no one else can. It can exploit weaknesses in the enemy team comp, plays at a speed that the game is playing at. So a lot of times you can just have a Tracer and open up parts of the map that were inaccessible before. Sojourn, I think, is the best medium range damage dealer right now. Most top 500 players are saying Ashe, but I think the characters you're going to play against, as well as the aim skill required of the two, Sojourn's just a bit easier and rewards spamming body shots even more so than Ashe does. If you can hit all your headshots, then Ashe will be better at top 500, but Sojourn's like more forgiving. And if you don't have the skill to play her, Soldier is just fine. Having consistent range damage is certainly a benefit, but not necessary. Overall, I'd say I value having a defensive cooldown, which Torb, Reaper, and Tracer all have. Range characters Hanzo, Ashe, Bastion, Cassidy. Ask yourself, can you hit a flying or mobility class character and punish them? If so, you'll be in win more mode. Pharah, Echo, Venture, Sombra are all mobility characters that have an all-in play, as in they've got the burst damage to create a flank. I think they're actually easier to play because of their mobility than the characters I listed above them that are medium range. But all of their kits are so unique, it's hard for me to judge what you'll be better at. DPS is a hard role right now. You kind of just need a style where you're gonna live. And while they all have their plays to make, I just think Junkrat can do the all-in play style, or you can play to live easier on another pick. Widow, I don't know, sniper maps, sure. The game's moving fast, hit shots, then she looks oppressive, but otherwise you're probably just gonna avoid her. You need less charge to one-hit kill a mobility class character now, but so what? The game's moving so fast. Good luck playing Widow. I can't drop her too low because she can dominate and take over the game, but I think 99% of players should find her very easy to beat because her health is so low. Rest of the damage tier list, Sim, Mei, these Fortnite style characters with builder mechanics, I find super underwhelming. If you're a specialist at them, I can see, all right, we've got Clash as a game mode, especially Throne, pretty good for both these picks. I just don't think they really contest most of the top characters. And you may have been wondering where he was this whole time. Genji, lowest on the DPS tier list. I felt optimistic about him for a second because it's like, oh, mobility meta, he'll be good, right? But kind of similar to when Kiri came out, Juno's got an ultimate that deploys in a space as opposed to Nano that you can give to Genji. So that means you just need a reliable character to stand and deliver in the ultimate. Genji's not that. Genji's dash reset guy. And with so many characters playing vertically, so few characters being vulnerable backliners, it's like, what does he even go at? BAP, I get? Like, look at the S tier. What is Genji good at? Soldier's a sniper, but has mobility in a small hitbox. The other characters have big escapes and much easier to land damage. Good luck farming the tanks. Yeah, there's only a few characters at the top half of the tier list that I think he's got good matchups against. So it's like, in my guide video, I said he's a good smurfing character, and he is. On the ranked reset, yep, you can outskill with reflect value, but short of that, good luck. The major tools of the game that are getting played kind of just aren't in his favor. There's a lot of team shooting and flexibility, whereas Genji really likes the solo carry impact style abilities, since he needs to snowball the fight in his favor, whereas a lot of the other DPS are kind of good at just running away or skirmishing. Like, that's what you want to do as a damage character. Shoot from range or run. All right, guys, that's the entire Season 12 tier list. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Remember, you can send in Season 12 replay codes linked in the description to the Google form. I've been going through all of them. The tank guide is going to be insane, hacking away at clips and examples of it. You guys liked the Season 12 guide we made. That one gives more of a further breakdown of some of the playstyles in play. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to click subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.